Hey everybody, my guest on the show today is Joyce. Chris is the founder and CEO of Gusher. He's also a longtime business founder and entrepreneur, and we're not even going to go into all that because we'd be here for 45 minutes listening to all the things you listed out. But we're going to get into some of that. Chris, welcome. Thanks for being here today.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jason.
Really appreciate it. So Chris, where are you located in the world right now?
Right this second, I'm sitting in a little bit of a suburb outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
How about yourself? You're in the
I
Catskills?
am up in I'm in the Catskills. So we're like maybe like 200 miles apart. We have a place at the Jersey Shore at Long Beach Island, so that's about 75 miles from Philly. Yeah, LBI.
Yeah.
Love LBI. So we'll Northeasterner, we're in the same time zone, which is nice because sometimes I interview people in like Eastern Europe or LA. So here we are. We're gonna have a good conversation. I can't wait to get to know you. I always like to say up front, we don't know each other.
Nope.
You just showed up here. We're recording, and we're gonna get to know each other, and we're gonna do it live for a bunch of people to listen
Sounds
to.
Good.
We're gonna do it live, and then they're gonna hear us here shortly. So, Chris, let's dig in on this. So, first question for you: what's something you nerd out about?
What's something I nerd out about? In terms of what I like to do is I like to nerd out on problems that typically other people consider impossible. We actually have a game. We call it, and I know it's going to sound kind of crazy, Kill Google. And so we always sit around and we try to figure out solutions to massive problems or problems that you like, how do you do it? That's what I nerd out about. I don't nerd out about like video games or sports or anything else. It's about the problem stuff. And I actually get off on that stuff.
Wow. So when you say kill Google, meaning when you're working with working with founders or other people, you're talking about how do we actually take down the behemoths like that?
Yeah, so think of it this way. I mean, it's always a starter. So before we go ahead and start thinking of ideation, or we do ideation meetings where, all right, we have beer, or we have wine, or we have, martinis, whatever the hell it is. Nowadays, it's still virtual and across the world with my team. But we literally start off with like, how would you kill Google? Or how would you do something as simple as taking a simple object like a wallet and make it way better? Because you've had every iteration under the sun created, and you've had every possibility or difficulty that you're facing with Google because they're such a behemoth, almost at two ends of the spectrum, that those are always the conversation starters. And so that gets the juices flowing for stuff that you end up solving. That's what I find. Wow.
Any examples you'd be willing to share? Obviously confidentiality.
Yeah, well, I can give you some like a little bit stuff and touching on the spectrum, but like when you start talking about killing Google, you start not only going down, let's say, the search engine process, but you start creating and looking at SaaS companies differently. You start looking at organizations differently. You start looking at fundamental structures and how to do it differently. So, I mean, I could literally spend a good half an hour just covering that. But what it does is you take aspects of what they're doing, how to do it better. And it's not small stuff, meaning that literally the DNA of a company, sometimes, you change one little DNA strand, one little DNA particle, and it sends that company down a whole different path. And so what we do is we play with permutations like that. We play with ideas like that do give birth to really sometimes good ideas. A lot of it's crap, but the crap ideas always lead to the good ideas. You never start off with great ideas. You start off with crap. You start off with bad ideas.
Yeah, that's cool. I think based on what I'm going to ask you, I think we're probably going to dig in further on this. So
sure.
Great place to start, Chris. So let's talk about your comfort zone, and I'm going to take off problem solving off the table because not everybody likes to problem. Some people just like to have it handed to them, right? Like, here's the answer. So what is something else besides, problem solving and getting into the deep stuff that you are comfortable doing and other people, it's a no for them?
Okay. This is the thing that I like to do. I like to fight. I like confrontation. It's something that I was not good at as a kid. And I've become really, really good at it. Now, when I say confrontation, I don't mean that you're sitting there fighting with somebody tooth and nail or you're defeating them physically. What I'm saying is that confrontation as a founder, as a person that starts companies, is really almost part of your everyday experience. And that can be dealing with a partner or somebody that you're working with, collaborating with, that they're not doing what they're supposed to do, or they're not on time, or they're not going ahead and reaching the standards that you've set for yourself in the company. And so most founders in the beginning, they have problems with that. They have problems where, okay, they've got a team, they've got people, and they're like, well, this guy showed up late, or this guy's not interacting the way I need to. And, those types of confrontations are really more of direct communication with people. I don't hesitate anymore. It's something that you get really good at, and you have to get good at as a founder, is directly confrontational or directly in a person's face and addressing an issue, black and white, the second that you start feeling that. You don't take it home with you. You don't sleep on it. You don't wait because it's 10 p.m. on a Friday night and take it over the weekend with you. You get that stuff out done right now and you address it. That's what I learned.
Yeah. And that's something you've had to work on. It sounds like that wasn't always a natural place to go.
Absolutely. I mean, it's something where, I was afraid to get on a phone as a kid. I was afraid to go ahead and interact. I was the person that, I ate lunch in a stairwell in school because I didn't interact with anybody. And going from that to what I do now is literally just the exact opposite. It's all people all day, 24/7 almost.
Yeah, including podcast hosts. Maybe we'll get in a fight here. That'd be kind of fun.
That's awesome.
With you. Here we go. All right. So what's the for those? It's not a call-in show. I'd be like, call in. Anybody who knows.
But hold up one second. Like, what do you find comfortable? You're great at. I mean, I'm curious, Jason. You're great at something that somebody else isn't. That people avoid.
Sure. I like walking in a room where I know nobody.
That's a hard skill.
That's a playground.
That's a hard skill.
That's a playground for me. Chris, I don't even relate to it as a skill. It's just my natural personality. I'm 100% extroverted on Myers-Briggs. I worked in sales for 20 years. I love people. You send me to a room where I know nobody, I'm not the least bit afraid. You send me up in front of a room of people to speak that I know nobody, not afraid.
Can I ask you a weird question?
Please.
All right. When you step into a room, I'm just trying to figure out how your mind works, because I know people that are like this. Okay.
Yeah.
When you step into a room, can you almost immediately know, like, basically not only who to go after, but backgrounds and information almost about them? Can you go ahead and draw conclusions necessarily from being in a room, just seeing them?
I mean, I've been trained to read body language, so that's a little bit of it. I wouldn't know the background. I've also learned through my coach. I used to think I was better at it, but I've actually learned to be more curious, where I'm like, don't make as many assumptions, as as a fellow business person, that can be the kiss of death every time.
Oh, absolutely.
But definitely there's certain things, but I try to like not do that anymore, because in sales, you get trained to do that. You're like, oh, come in and who's this person and what do they care about? And like make all these assumptions, which is actually really foolish advice, because you have no idea.
I just only ask because I know a couple people on the spectrum, and they say they're on the spectrum, that they're autistic. Sure. They can do that. They really know that, okay, this is the type of person I'm looking for. There's a room of 300 people. Boom. They know. I was just
curious. That I do not have. I don't think I do. I've actually moved away from even worrying about who they are. I'm just more interested in like curious, talk to them.
Damn interesting.
We either connect or we don't, and that's okay. Yeah. Great question. Where'd you get that question from, Chris?
That really was just in terms of playing off of you. I mean, there's no history.
No, it's good.
Anything else.
It's good. Well, let's move to the other side of that coin then.
Sure.
For you, and like I'll answer if you want me to answer for you and for the audience, is what about something that's on the flip of that? So what's something that you are uncomfortable with that other people are?
Oh, that I know other people are. Small talk. And I know that may sound like basic stuff, but like, you may be a master of small talk and getting that going. I can't do small talk. Like even though I fake it, and it's hard for me to do, like talking about sports, talking about whatever, talking about this, get it going. It's like almost routine. It's not like part of me. It's almost in a way like I'm not prejudging. But if it's business, dude, I'm like a savant. I can talk to you all day about business, every day, everything else. But anything else, almost no interest whatsoever. It's just weird,
Yeah. Are you a Curb Your Enthusiasm fan at all? Which is by definition a little bit small. Todd, have you ever seen there's a dinner party where he's sitting next to, it's Chris Parnell from Saturday Night Live.
Sure.
And he's trying to make small talk, and he's like, would you like to elevate the small talk to medium talk? And then he asks him, he's like, so how often do you have sex with your wife? And the guy's like, wait, excuse me. Like, I like that. I'm like, how do we elevate small talk to medium talk?
The medium talk, like get something meat there. Yeah.
Within like 30 seconds. So like, we're not getting to know each other. We're going to like, just get out of the sports and weather. I shared this on the show a few weeks ago with another guest. The culture that I grew up in, Minnesota, is very small talk focused, lots of weather, lots of sports, lots
Yep.
of like church or, what are your kids doing?
It's
Not a
Midwest.
lot of deep, not a lot of deep stuff is how, not that I was raised out. It's just kind of like culture. That's a Scandinavian culture is
There you go.
you really focus on the food. Food is a huge conversation piece.
And ice
Huge
fishing.
conversation piece. What's that?
Ice fishing.
Ice fishing, the
Hunting.
Gophers, the Vikings. Yeah, like all that
Yeah, yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Awesome. Let's see, Chris. So we're gonna make some more small talk here just to get you a little more uncomfortable. This one,
can
I
still do
see.
it.
This question, I don't find small talk. Some of these are, but this one I think is a little more meaty. So I
Okay.
give you 5 minutes, and you get to speak to all of us listening, and quite frankly, everybody in the world. And you get to speak to the world about anything you want.
Yeah, sure.
You get 5 minutes. What would you talk about? And at the end of your speech, what would you want us to do?
Sure. I think that almost in a way is an easy one. And that's something that has evolved over time. So let me explain, first of all, my thought process to get there. All right.
Please.
So I fundamentally believe that most people out there that are out there in the world have this little voice, that little voice telling them to do something, whatever it is. It's a dream. Maybe it's to start a business. Maybe it's to go after something. Maybe it's to create something, whatever it is. And their whole life, they have all these other voices going ahead and telling them to suck it down, that it's a bad idea, to not to do it. Everything else, from the time that they're almost out of the womb, they're told that their ideas are necessarily bad and to not do it. And then when they start turning into adults, they end up on a path, and that path usually is not the best one or the one that they're really born for. And so what I see time and time again out there is that there's all this human potential that is untapped. And that human potential that is untapped is that little voice, that one little voice that has to stand up in their head. I don't know if you can see it right now, but I'm getting goosebumps.
Yeah.
Because literally that's what I fundamentally believe in, that everybody needs to untap. They need to listen to that voice. And that voice may lead to failures. And that voice is not an easy road per se to go down. And that easy voice, you end up maybe risking everything. And it may not be worth the price to you to risk it. But that little voice is your soul. That little voice is the reason why you're put here in terms of what you're doing. And I fundamentally believe that everyone should go after that little voice and try to make it happen. And, as final words, and I'd go into more detail on it, but final words I would say is, in order to tap that little voice, it comes down to one thing, one damn thing. It's so damn simple. You've heard it before. People have poo-pooed it or whatever else as too simple, but it's a function of never give up. That's all it is. Because if you never give up, you're at least on the right road. You're going after something that you want. You'll never feel bad about not achieving it if you don't. You're going after something that you want. And if you go ahead and achieve it, yes, okay, great. You'll realize soon enough that maybe achievement isn't the end. It's part of going after it, the travel towards it, the journey, whatever the hell you want to call it. But you've got to untap that little voice and listen to that little voice. It's important.
Yeah. I have a follow-up on that before we go to a quick commercial break here. This resonates a lot for me based on the kind of work I do. And I'm curious if anybody's listening and they go, I don't hear that little voice. Cause I know there's been parts of my life where I haven't really felt the little voice. You're busy. And you and I were both parents and spouses and business owners and all that stuff. Like you get caught up in all the stuff that life comes and you're like, wait, there's a little voice. I'm just busy, like doing the routine.
Existing.
How would you have people get connected to that little voice?
Listen, there's certain things that I do, and I even have troubles at times doing this, okay? I have the same thing. I've got 3 kids going to events nonstop. Like I feel like I'm an Uber driver doing it and everything else, okay? And I deal with founders 24/7 around the globe. I mean, I'm going nonstop almost all the time. How I do it is the following, and it's just for me, all right? First of all, I do it in my quote-unquote alone time almost in the morning when I'm lifting weights. So I'm working there. My brain's automatically doing something physical. Those are when the thoughts come. Like when I'm doing something else, I'm not thinking about anything. It's hard enough lifting those weights, especially in a cold freaking garage when it's 20 degrees during the winter, that's the time that I do it. Or it sounds crazy. In order, sometimes I literally sit in my car, turn the heat on 80, 90 degrees, because we're talking about winter right now and what to do, and just sit there in absolute quiet and turn everything off. And sometimes it comes and sometimes it doesn't. But if you keep doing it and keep trying it and keep going back to it, something will go ahead and spring to life. And if nothing springs to life, then take your brain and pick an idea. And what ends up happening is, even though that's a bad idea, even though it may not be right, it leads you to something that may be right. So literally taking action is the next step after just trying to isolate yourself in quiet and listen to your head.
Yeah. I love that. The idea of like body mind connection or body soul connection. Yeah. Like get out of your, well, quite frankly, before we go to the break here, what I'm hearing in that, and the way it works for me too, is I'm a big exercise person, is get out of your head. Yeah. In your head is not that little voice. Usually it's coming from somewhere else. And that's why you can't hear it when you're in your head, because your head has a million voices. I mean, I know mine does. And I'm not talking that I'm crazy, although some may say I am. I'm saying just there's a lot going on in most people's heads. Yeah. So that inner voice. And I had another guest I had in my first season, a coach I really respect. She said this to me once. She said that when the voices are feeling like the voices are where you should go, are loud and boisterous and varying opinions, that's usually from your head. But the voice that's going to come from your soul or your heart or your gut or whatever resonates for you, it's going to be calm, it's going to be quiet, and it's going to be steady.
Absolutely. And it never goes away.
And it never goes away.
So when it's there, and once you have that back again, if you've shoved it down and you've swallowed it down so much that it's covered in all this dirt and soil and everything else, the second you start giving it sunlight, it just doesn't go away. It's there in the morning. It's there in the evening. It's there when you wake up and are thinking, and that's your first thought. It's there as your last thought of the day. That's typically how I know.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Chris, we're going to take a brief break. We'll be right back. Sure.
The Talking to Cool People podcast is brought to you by Jason Frizzell Coaching. Jason works with amazing people who are looking to find and develop their passion and purpose and create their journey to wherever it is they want to go. Check us out at jasonfrizzell.com, Facebook, or on Instagram. Jason loves hearing from anyone who thinks it would be cool to connect, to be coached, or to be a guest on our show. Email him at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com or DM him on Facebook and Instagram. And now, back to some more amazing conversation on Talking to Cool People.
All right, Chris, I had mentioned this earlier as we kicked off, and no, we're not going to ask you to go through every single business you've ever started or everything you do. Sure. But I am curious to know, what else is it that you'd like us all to know about you?
What else? I mean, the one thing that we touched on just before is human potential. You know, and not to go into a whole infomercial on what I do, but Gusher is my most recent company, and what we're doing is unlocking more human potential than anything else I can do. Gusher is a platform to launch companies without the need for capital, without the need for money. People join these companies in exchange for performance-based equity. And what I tell founders is, who don't have a penny, and they're all across the globe, if you had $1 million or $2 million in the bank, what type of company would you build? How would you build it? And then Gusher that. And so what we're doing is untapping human potential, whether it's a grandmother in South Africa that just got a QVC deal, whether it's a 59-year-old marketing exec that got laid off from COVID, won product of the year last year, or whether it's two 20-year-old Villanova students launching consumer goods companies and medical device companies. They're all across the globe, all ages, everything. And the one thing that ties them together is they have a dream, but they don't have any money, and they don't need money.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you also connect good people together? If you're like a technical co-founder, business co-founder, those sort of things? Yeah,
but think of this. We don't necessarily connect them like I say, hey, Bill, call Susie, or Susie, hey, call Bill. What ends up happening is these teams come together a certain way. So and this is a prime example. We have a company on our platform that's a dog food company. Okay. When he first put up his company on Gusher, he literally went ahead and brought in people that had managed $50 million, $100 million, $200 million budgets. All right. 6 weeks later, the whole company imploded. He then listened to me. His second team took off like a rocket, put another team together. And the second team, they're worth $10 million a year later, growing 30% month over month, very capital intensive, competitive industry, the dog food industry.
Yeah.
But they all had something in common, Jason. This is not a trick question. It's a dog food company. What do
Right.
you think all the team members had in common on the second team?
They all have dogs.
Damn right. They didn't even have kids. They were dog parents. They were dog zealots. They ate dog, breathe dog, live dog, poop dog. They got dogs. That's the type of team that you want. You want people that really get what you're doing. And we facilitate that.
Yeah. And that's something, if you watch Shark Tank, they talk about all the time, is they'll ask them, like, you're doing this product, why? And usually the why is because it means something to you personally, which is going to have your little voice or your heart connected to it, as opposed to, this is the way I'm going to make a bunch of money. Because I work with a lot of founders. You work with a ton of founders. We both know that the startup is not actually the way that is most is the statistically most probable way to make a lot of money in your lifetime. There's many other ways to do it, but it is the most rewarding.
But also, you touched on something right there, and because it's something personal to them, and this is what most people don't understand. If you're looking at it just from a business standpoint, that's one thing. If you're looking at it from a personal standpoint, and it's a startup, all right, you need to have that, because what a founder goes through, we call it the furnace or the roller coaster of awesomeness. It is not an easy path.
No.
And what gets you through that is not just, hey, I'm going to make money eventually. It's that, hey, I love the mission. I love what I'm doing. I'm doing this for a reason. And that's usually the companies that end up creating a better company, a better product.
Yeah.
That care.
They have a real what for outside of the financial part. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's cool, Chris. That's very cool. All right. Now we're going to have you ask me anything you'd like. And since we just met about 30 minutes ago, I'm really curious what's coming. I have no idea.
Sure.
Chris, what do you want to ask me that I can answer for you and everybody listening?
Well, I'm going to ask you what I think is the most important question. And I think when I'm dealing with anybody and any founder or anything else, I teach them this, whether it's founders or buyers of their product or whatever it may be, whether they're dealing with chains or individuals, whatever it may be, they have to ask this question. The reason they ask this question is because it's the Rosetta Stone for dealing with them. It tells you what's important, what the real reason is that they think and do things. So I'm going to ask you right off the bat, you know, why did you get into coaching? Why go down this road? I mean, it's a difficult road. Yes. Everybody and their uncle is calling themselves a coach. Everybody and their uncle, you know, it's becoming a saturated thing. So why choose this path in terms of what you're doing? And don't give me the line. I just want to help people. Why did you become a coach? I want to know the real reason, as far as it goes back, and maybe it goes back to when you were a kid.
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
It's we did not prep this. This is perfect, because as somebody who's labeled as a coach on LinkedIn, I get marketed to every single day. Right. And most of them is like, we help spiritually aligned coaches, or we help coaches who just want to help people. Who do you know who doesn't want to help people?
Right. Exactly.
Like, everybody wants to help people.
Right.
That's not why I'm here. It's like, and actually, I love this question. This is the second time I've answered this today, and the first time was not on a podcast. There you go. So the reason I'm here and the reason I got into coaching is because I hired a coach, which if you know executive coaches, people who do coaching and like more of the business type of stuff, like what I do, and I know a lot of them do it because they were coached and realized what that actually means, not just to help people. Sure. Because to me, just helping people isn't a strong enough pull for me personally to stick it out from like the first couple of years of building your business. Like you said, like it's not enough. Like there's a million ways I can help people. I can go make $250,000 working for a corporation and then give a bunch to charity, and that's helping people too.
Exactly. Right.
So doing it this way. So you and I are on the same page with this. So the reason I do this is because I was a recipient and still have a coach. I was a recipient of it, and it helped me uncover a lot of the like inner voice stuff that you talked about. Cause I was not connected to that. I was connected to like, I was in sales. So like, here's what you do. And here's your quarterly quota or your yearly quota. And so I hired a coach, did a lot of work with her. And I realized that it was a good fit for my personality, because it goes back to like, I love people. I'm genuinely curious. It's why I do this podcast too. Sure. So I'm like, oh wait, there's this work that I know can make a difference. And I get to work with people. Like if you ever taken DISC or any of the other personality assessments, sure. I'm a high ID, which means that I like influence and I like results. I don't like the details. Coaching's great. Coaching is a great, and it's kind of like podcasting. I get to come on and work with my clients, and then I don't have to do anything.
Right.
I know how to execute, but I don't enjoy it. I don't like to implement. I know how to do it. I don't enjoy it. So I think what happened for me, my path was I started working with a coach. It's also why I like sales, because sales, you kind of got to do with a bunch of stuff, but then you do nothing once you've sold it, which is
you get the big thing. Right. Exactly.
Yeah. You did the thing, but then you hand it off to customer success or, whatever the structure is. So for me, I'm here because I realized the power of it. I realized what it really was. And then I decided to go through a quite intensive training program and realized even more about myself. And then I also realized that it was a good fit for my personality. And I went in knowing that it was going to be like, because, I've spent a lot of time in business. I knew it wasn't going to be, oh, you just go out and tell people you're a coach and they come and pay you a bunch of money and it's all good and you build a business. Because, it's, as you said, and this is my coaching soapbox, it's kind of like real estate in that, like, the barrier to become a real estate agent is quite low.
Yep.
And not that real estate agents aren't amazing, but it's not a huge step to be a real estate agent. Like, to be like a founder, it's actually not a huge step to be a founder, really. Yeah. I mean, in some ways, but to be a coach, you need less than it's unregulated. You don't even need a license from your state.
Right.
Say, hey, I have a laptop and a phone and a brain and 2 ears and a mouth, or not even, I'm a coach. And you're right, a lot. And that's how it gets represented a lot. But I decided when I was going to do it, that I was going to invest in it and do it like any other profession where you learn how to do it. You go through a really rigorous process and you learn how to do it. I think ethically is the first thing, but also how to really make a difference for people outside of telling them what to do. Because a lot of coaching is just people telling you what to do or having their framework, which is cool. Right. But that's also consulting, not coaching.
Right. Exactly.
Which I do consulting too, which is great. Sometimes people want that. And I love consulting. If you know how to do something better than me and you know the right way to do it, tell me. I'm probably not going to argue with you.
Do you have people calling you up at 11 p.m. on a Friday because their deal has fallen apart? Or do you have people calling you up on Saturday morning at 3 a.m. because their manufacturing run got tainted because whatever was added to it?
Never.
I do.
Yeah, I know you do.
I get.
You're at your kid's sporting event and you're like, oh my gosh, it's the fourth quarter. Oh, wait a second. No, I don't have any of that. I'm their person for 1 hour a week or so.
That's great.
And then plus texting or Slack or whatever. But so that's why. So that's why I decided to get into it, and it's been very, very rewarding. And I actually know I don't even need my inner voice. Like, this is actually what I'm meant to do.
You're right. And you just know, and it's in alignment with your heart and your head. I mean, it's there.
And my skill set.
If you have a bad day or a bad time, are you sitting there questioning whether or not you should be right? Exactly. And that's how you know you're on the right path. That's how you know you're on the right path.
Yeah. So I know I'm on the right path. There are a few times when I'll be coaching certain people and I'll be like, this is not my person.
Right.
But when you're coaching, it's probably like when you're doing.
What do you do in that case? I'm curious.
You
call it a day and let them go and say, hey, you're not my person?
I fired a couple of clients before, but it's not usually mutually beneficial. But for me, if they're coachable, I'm willing to work with them. If somebody's just unwilling to be coachable, it's kind of like I'm sure it's similar to your work. If you have a founder that's on the platform, they're just unwilling to partner with you and hear what you have for them, then it's not worth it.
We have a litmus test for that, actually. So we have a thing before we get involved with them a little bit. We don't make them jump through hoops and all that. But really, we have a saying on Gusher, 1 + 1 does not equal 2. 1 + 1 equals done. So the hardest thing to do on at least founding a company from our perspective and our thesis is recruiting that first person into your team. So if a founder is able to recruit that first person into their team, and we show them how and tell them what to do, and we hold their hand a little bit, but if they don't do it, all right, they're DOA. They're going to fail. But 80% of founders do that. And so those are the ones we spend the time with. And usually they're really good.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And just to wrap with this, the nice thing about the coaching profession, if you're a professional coach and you charge enough, most people that show up in your sphere of influence and that might want to work with you are going to be coachable because they're looking for a coach.
Yeah.
So they're kind of like a warm lead. And they're like, hey, I could use somebody to coach me and my executive team on blank, blank, blank. It's not generally like, hey, I don't know, I'm just going to talk to a coach and see what's up. It's usually a little bit warmer than that. Great question.
Have you ever had, because I've had this, and I want your opinion on this.
Yeah.
This is going on a tangent, though. And I'm not kidding about this. I've had people fly in on their plane, all right, or planes, people that that are like, Chris, I just got to meet with you and talk with you. I'm like, dude, I don't want to meet with you. And they're like, how much do you charge? I'm like, dude, I'm not charging or whatever. I'm not doing anything like that. And so anyway, we meet at a restaurant, and they're on their happy way 4, 5, 6 hours later or whatever it may be. What have you ever had something like, because I hate coaching. I freaking hate it. I hate that interaction of just, I see what their business is supposed to do. I know what it's supposed to do. I tell them what to do, go on. But my wife is like, why aren't you charging these guys? Because they can afford it left and right. And I'm like, it's not my business. It's not what I do. And do you run into, like, how would you handle that? Would you charge them? Would you deal with them? What would you do?
Well, I guess, it's a hypothetical. So without knowing your financial situation or anybody's.
They're hedge fund guys always. Yeah. They're always hedge fund guys.
Yeah. I mean, I have somebody that I know, he has a borrow my brain hourly rate. So if you don't want to work with them long term,
can't do that. I'm not an hourly person.
Yeah. Well, yeah. If it doesn't work in your business model, then, maybe like, I guess what I would say is, what for meeting with them? Like, there must be something in it for you.
Well, no, I mean, it's one of those things where, and you got to understand, I come from a place where most of my businesses were a result of asking somebody for help at a key point. So I asked people for help. And even with one of my businesses, I ended up going through 500 food chemists before I found one. And years later, when the company was worth a huge amount, I asked him, why did he do it? Because I was just a voice on a phone and an email. And he's like, because you asked for help. And so when people ask me for help, I try to give it. I can't do it all the time, and I can't do it for all scenarios, but I really just do try to help at times.
Yeah, that makes, and if it's like you mentioned soul earlier, I'm using the word soul aligned. If that's soul aligned and something that you believe is part of your mission in this life, awesome. Yeah. And especially if you're not an hourly consultant or coach, then you just said you hate coaching. Don't do it. Yeah. And you never know when, but the other thing too is the pay it forward. You talk to them, then they refer somebody to Gusher. They end up on Gusher. You end up making them successful, and it all works out anyway.
Yeah. It all comes back.
Yeah. It all comes back. Exactly. All right, Chris, what are you passionate about?
What am I passionate about? I am passionate about, and listen, everything comes back to business, okay? Because that's the way I'm wired. I'm passionate about trying new things. I'm passionate about literally not doing what everybody else has done. I'm passionate about creating new versions, new angles, new whatever it may be. I love starting. I hate when a business gets past 10 million, 50 million. I lose interest. It holds nothing for me. But literally the start is where there's no template for it. The start is where there's the fog of war. The start is where everything is. The start is where you have impact. And so I like that. I really love starting businesses, starting new models, going after behemoths. I love David Goliath situations. I live for that shit. I mean, I absolutely love it. And that's what I do. When it comes down to helping people, that's part of it, but it's really about the startup. It's about the start, the idea.
Yeah. And you'd mentioned you're a father. So are you starting to see this in your children?
My children! Oh God, my children were starting their own businesses without my input, without anything else, from the age of 5. I swear to God, they did. My youngest, who is now 8 or 9, he's 9. During COVID, was out on the street. I didn't tell him to do this. Just waiting for cars to come by, trying to sell toilet paper. All right, I mean, I was like, where does that come from? Right. And then there was another time when one was younger, I think 5, and he made these molds out of that sand stuff that they have. They can create anything, and put them on a table and sold them. Sure enough, he learned certain things about business. A neighbor bought one, then other people bought some, and then sure enough, his brothers joined him because now it had momentum, just like a company. And he learned a lot of things about that, how a company starts up. I never helped them. I never went out there and told them how to do it or anything else. It seems to be in the DNA.
Yeah, I was going to say, so the answer is abso-freaking-lutely.
Abso-freaking-lutely in a nice way.
Is your wife entrepreneurial as well?
Exact opposite. She's
I would imagine.
Psychologist. Yeah, psychologist.
I would imagine.
Doctor. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's
that probably wouldn't have worked.
No. Yeah, as a matter of fact, as she said, I need a full-time shrink. She's it. She's a psychologist. That's what she does. So.
That interesting conversation.
A certain way to be with a founder.
Yes.
It is not easy.
No, that's good. That's a Chris. What's the thing that you're most proud of?
By far, my children. In terms of bringing up the right way and being there for them. And I was going to ask you a question. All right.
Yeah, please.
You're a father. You've got a 2-year-old and a 7-year-old. You've been in the oven a little bit. I was curious, how has your thoughts changed about anything? What have you learned? What is the most important thing you've learned from being a father? Because with me, a lot of things changed when I became a father. So I'm curious what happened with you.
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes to mind is even more connection to fun. Like for me, I've always been somebody like fun is kind of my driving force. It's why we're here. It's why I do this podcast because it's fun. Yeah. And it's like, my friends know this. I have this saying, I'm like, if it ain't fun, I ain't doing it. Now, is that true all the time? No, of course. Like I hate doing taxes and I hate, chores, but generally when I get to choose that. But I think for me, Chris, it's like you can have fun doing almost anything if you choose it. And, and you know this too, like at this age with like 6, 7, you can have a whole lot of fun too. He's starting to talk. He's like, I'm turning him into a deadhead because I'm a deadhead, like super fun and just being more present.
I turned mine into metalhead. So they all go AC/DC, Judas Priest.
Oh yeah. Indoctrination of your young children is one of the greatest things you can ever do. It's great.
That's a great
He's got
word.
daddy's video game controllers and watching Grateful Dead concerts together.
That's awesome.
But I think it's like appreciating that you can generate fun from almost anything and not having to have it be the big thing. I think back to before we had children, like you got to go on a trip, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to buy this thing. And now it's like, oh, we can have fun getting up in the morning and watching a music video together or playing guitar or just talking about the school day. So I think for me, that was like learning to appreciate the small things. And then also most parents that I know are like this, most, not all, just really learn that most of the other stuff isn't that big a deal.
Right.
Like as long as your kids are healthy and they're happy and they're learning and they're enjoying the world and you're keeping them safe. Like the rest of the stuff, like, oh, so you have a client who fired you or like a deal goes south, like life goes on.
Right.
So those are things like, and most parents will tell you this, like perspective and then fun. Those are the big things.
My 9-year-old is a pretty good wrestler. Okay. Yeah. He's second year. Now, there are kids out here. I don't know if you're up in New York, but out when you grew up in Minnesota in that area, just like here, they start like when they're 4 years old, 5 years old.
Oh, wrestling is huge in Minnesota.
Right. So he's in part of this group and everything else. And, and then he's in a special club and he's, there are people that have won state championships, go after state championships, whatever else. And we're sitting at a tournament this last weekend. And, it's pressure filled for a parent because, you feel kind of what they're feeling. You're going through what they're going through and you want to prep it for them and not take it, too seriously. And he said a comment to me that suddenly made wrestling so much easier. He said to me, Dad, listen, I like wrestling, but I'm not in it to be an Olympian. I'm not becoming a wrestler to become a state champion. I do it because I get time with you and I like some of the trophies. And well, that's kind of good enough for me. I'm not really worried. And then suddenly the pressure came off. I'm like, great. Because Amazing. He was wrestling up a class to heavyweight. And I was kind of worried about him getting decimated. And he ended up winning, et cetera, et cetera. But he just had a good outlook. I said, Bud, you have this down pat now at 9 years old. You have nothing else to learn. It's about that.
You're done. 9. Yeah.
Exactly.
You got him his own apartment. He's started his third company. You've helped him raise some capital. It's all good. It's great, Chris.
Exactly.
That's a nice thing. That's such the reverse of how some parents would operate. No, you're good at this. You need to lean into this. You need to keep doing it.
Well, it was right before I saw another parent yelling at his kid to stop crying. And he was like, stop crying. What is that about? You know the routine. You've seen it, I'm sure. And I sat there going like, what are you doing? This is just a kid's event. And he's like, and that's what led to that phrase and saying that to me. So that was good.
That's also not, I don't like commenting on other people's parenting, but that's when you get to send that. But that's also telling the kid to stop crying is you realize you should probably start saving for that kid's therapist now because when you get to be the adult, they're going to be like, well, I was told I can never express my emotions, which is like the toxic masculinity stuff that goes on.
Absolutely.
And I can identify with it. I was never told like that, but I was just kind of a cultural thing is like, really express yourself because like there's no weakness here. You're good.
Yeah. You're a man. Move on.
Man. Yeah.
Fuck it up.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Let's see, Chris. Speaking of therapy, what are you afraid might actually be true about you?
That I'm an a-hole. I've heard that phrase that if you don't see an a-hole in the room, chances are you're the a-hole.
I've heard that too.
Listen, I'm usually the a-hole, and I hate to say it. I try to go ahead and make an effort, but it's certain rooms, I dominate, and others, it's like I guess I'm just not built for it. So I'm sometimes the a-hole. I'm the guy that, again, I started off with this talking to you about, being, going after or not being afraid to fight. Sometimes that's too much. And so that's definitely probably true about me. Definitely, probably. That's a great statement.
Yeah. Well, how would you define a-hole?
I think there's different ways. I mean, obviously, I don't mean a-hole in the negative context, like you screw people. I mean a-hole in that you come on very hard and fast, that you're there to get what you want, that you're extremely driven and you're not apologetic about it. Those can be certain traits that are obviously very, very good, but with teams and collaborations, especially as you grow, and this is what I learned from my kids, that's sometimes definitely not the best way to be. You can always set the standard extremely high and drive to get there, but you can do it in nicer ways than certain ways I did in my 20s or 30s. I was a definite a-hole in my 20s and 30s. So
yeah. And now you're half a-hole. You've gone from medium a-hole to small a-hole. You've gone with the reverse. That's good.
51% a-hole. Let's leave it at that.
51%. But also the kind of work you do, you got to be pretty straight with people quite a bit.
Very much. As a matter of fact, they usually introduce me as here's the person without tact, and I don't. But I don't have time. And they want to know it's straight, and they want to know what's going on. And I'm not going to tell a guy that because he has a $30 million company and he had to mortgage his house last month to go ahead and make payroll, that it's not a fucked up structure. It's literally, you've got to be straight about that stuff, and you've got to cut right down to it. Otherwise, he's lying to himself, his shareholders, his teams, everything else. And I'm not there to do that. So
yeah. All right. So start to wrap up here, Chris. Just wondering, how is it that you see the world? What's your life philosophy?
My life philosophy is basically, I live by the golden rule. That's number one. I live by the golden rule. It's not always easy. Number two, I fundamentally believe that myself, and I expect it from others, that you are here to live your full potential. So I want to leave life empty. I'm not here to accumulate things. I'm not here just to do experiences, which are great. I'm here to leave life empty and to send those ripples as far as they can go in terms of basically untapping that human potential. I really do believe that. That's why I'm here.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like you were in the perfect kind of work to do that too. Like it seems like what you do is really a huge impact. If you're helping, you're helping companies grow and products and B2C, B2B, all those things. That's super cool.
Yeah, it is neat. And it took hell to get it, and hell to start building it,
Yeah, of course. So Chris, how can people connect with you, learn more about you? What's a good place to find out more about Gusher? Obviously you've got the website. How would you want people to get connected with you?
Sure. Well, I'm easy to find. I'm pretty much everywhere. But if they went to gusher.co, they can find me very easily. Find me on LinkedIn. I'm usually the first person that comes up under Chris Joyce. I'm just easily found. I'm happy to go ahead and talk with anyone or help you out as much as I humanly can. Even if you're not on Gusher, I help out founders depending upon the stage they're at.
Nice.
Yeah, for real. But as I said, it always comes back. And just basically, if you're an entrepreneur, a founder, and you're going to catch 22, just know this: there's no such thing as catch 22s. Pure and simple.
Yeah. Also, if you're a coach trainer, reach out to Chris. He's been very clear. He really wants to become a coach.
No coaching. Zero. Nada. Coaching. Unless I'm an equity holder, I want nothing to do with you.
You want nothing to do with you. He'll be like, unless you're a founder of a coach something, then no coach. No, that's funny. Well, Chris,
our founders need coaching. So
what's that?
I said our founders need coaching.
Yeah,
they always do.
Yeah. So Chris, love if you'd leave us with some short and sweet words of wisdom. Something that, I think of this as something that you live by, maybe something you tell your kids, your boys, just something short and sweet. What do you got for us?
Listen, I don't know if everybody here is visual or not, but I keep this always by me because it's something, and I know I said it earlier. All right. I've got a coin that has two damn things on it. Never give up. And I am enough. Hopefully that comes through. The never give up is self-evident. You can't give up going after whatever it is. It doesn't matter. But the I am enough part is core to that. You as a human being, the universe has given you everything that you need to get what you want. It doesn't matter if you have, the resources that you think you may need. It doesn't matter if you're born in poverty, if you're in a bad country, a bad state of mind, whatever it may be. You have everything you need literally right this second to do what you attempt to do and to take those steps, which then further other steps. So never give up, and I am enough. That's it.
Never give up. I am enough. Those two things are, man, you can own those two things. You can go far in life. I love that.
It's
Chris,
everything.
Thank you so much for being on. I want to wish you, the Gusher team, and also all of the people you support the very best in the marketplace with all the things they're up to. Sounds like some cool stuff. We're dog owners over here. You got to tell me the name of the dog food company. Sure. We are huge dog fans. And we'll have to have you back on again sometime to come and talk straight up entrepreneurship, get some more of this expertise, because I feel like I didn't ask you any expertise questions. Sure. And if you're going to give it to us for free, like you're doing already, we might as well do it on a podcast as well.
Absolutely. All the bad stuff. That's what I deal with. The bad stuff, the ugly stuff, the gray stuff.
Yeah, we'll have you come on and do like horror stories from the field or something, like horror stories from the entrepreneurial field.
That's every day, man. That's every day.
I'm sure you can write a book.
Jason.
Thanks so much, Chris. Really appreciate it. Take care.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Talking to Cool People with Jason Frizzell. If you enjoyed today's episode, please tell your friends. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook and give us a shout out, or take a moment to leave a review on iTunes. If something from today's episode piqued your interest and you'd like to connect, email us at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com. We love hearing from our listeners because you're cool people too.